As David has our slides up for this presentation today, once again, we're glad you could join us to learn about dementia and the lessons learned through purposeful engagement. We in our expressions communities and our celebrations communities, which are our assisted living and our memory care communities, are really excited about the purposeful engagement that we see happening amongst our residents, our staff, our families, and that is really what we're all about in our mission of Prestige to personally touch lives every day. So David, I'll let you go ahead and advance to the next slide, and I'll give a little bit of introduction to David. Some of you may have joined us before for our wonderful webinars with David. David is the co-author of the book A Dignified Life and Best Friends Approach to Dementia Care with Virginia Bell. David has been a consultant with Prestige Senior Living for many years, and we just value his input as he learns all of the new state-of-the-art information about dementia and brain wellness. And he has been just an exciting contributor to how we've formed our programming and our product here at Prestige Senior Living. So David, we're so glad to have you. I believe the next slide gives a little bit of information. Great. So David, you go ahead and take it from here and talk a little bit about your experience.
Well, thank you, Angie. I'll try to make this very brief, but I've been delighted to partner with Prestige Senior Living for many years now in their development of their own memory care program called Expressions. I've worked in this field for, gosh, about 30 years, hard to believe, with my dear friend and co-writer, Virginia Bell, who lives in Lexington, Kentucky, and we are known for the development of something called the Best Friends Approach to Alzheimer's Care. I know something that has very much influenced the unique and interesting product that Prestige has come up with in terms of their memory care programming. My career has been pretty varied. I've worked about half my career with the Alzheimer's Association, but also worked in university and community settings. And like many of you on the call, be you a family member or professional, I've also been a family member for my mom, Dorothy, who passed away in 2008 with Alzheimer's disease. So I've kind of been on both sides of this equation. And my mother actually lived in memory care for 3 years here in Sacramento. So again, I've been a client as well as a friend and advocate for my mother. Angie, do you want to introduce yourself, or should I brag about you? What would be your preference?
I'll go ahead a little bit of history with myself. I live here in Gig Harbor, Washington, and I've been a part of Prestige Senior Living for the last almost 11 years. I've been a caregiver for my mother-in-law who lived with Alzheimer's and then became a caregiver with Prestige 11 years ago as I started a different career change in my life when I found out that I had a real passion for everything about memory care. And I've worked lots of different manager positions within Prestige, and they've been really wonderful at the training that they provide. And I'm so grateful to now be the Expressions product manager for our memory care product, and being able to work alongside David and just learn from him and really enjoy the great information that we've learned and ways that we can meet the needs of our residents within our communities and the families, and join together and be a real partnership in that. And our Prestige mission is always to personally touch lives every day. And we're so grateful that we get to do that within what we do every day.
Well, thank you very much, Angie. And I have to just say that it's just been a delight for me as someone who views myself as an advocate for people living with dementia, as well as their family members, to partner with you. Angie, you're just so much fun to work with. You're so passionate and creative about the work you do, as are pretty much everybody I've met at Prestige. So thank you for that very much. So we'll jump into today's webinar, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the kind of the brief overview of symptoms of dementia and how they impact activities. Today, again, we're going to be talking a lot about doing things with the person with dementia. Specific activity ideas around important areas, including exercise, art, music, lifelong learning, and civic engagement. Some lofty words, but again, you'll begin to see my thesis along with Angie that it's so important to create an interesting and good day for people living with dementia. We'll talk about how technology and the web, besides making all of this possible, can be essential tools in planning interesting activities. We'll discuss strategies for fighting apathy. I just was talking to a family member yesterday. David, I can't get my mother out of the house. I've tried all sorts of things. She just doesn't want to leave. How can I get her to do things more? So we'll talk about that. And then we're going to reflect a little bit at the end of the presentation about some of the lessons we've learned from the COVID pandemic when it comes to dementia care and some steps forward. Hopefully, even with the Delta variant up there now and all of our attentions, hopefully we are still able to envision a day when we're through this pandemic and the enormous impact it's had on all of us and a lot of our elders as well. So as we think about activities, I do think it's important to kind of tie this back into some of the challenges people face who live with Alzheimer's disease or one of the other dementias. And I've been told that perhaps the top and most popular downloaded handout of all the handouts for the Alzheimer's Association is something called the 10 warning signs of dementia. I think all of us are worried about our memories, so many even younger people have downloaded this document. But this reminds us, I think it's a great, great tool. It reminds us that there's more to Alzheimer's disease than just simple memory loss. People with Alzheimer's or these other dementias do have memory loss that can disrupt daily life, but they also have challenges in planning or solving problems, difficulty completing familiar tasks. So maybe someone who's always been a good cook can't really follow that recipe anymore. Confusion with time or place. They may think they're 40, not 80. They may think they're living on a boat instead of in an assisted living community, may get mixed up about the city they're living in. Trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. So perhaps you've seen your mother or father pick up a fork and they literally miss their mouth. Maybe they're hesitant with their steps because a shadow looks like a hole on the ground, but these visual spatial issues can be a problem. New problems in words, speaking, or writing, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps, decreased or poor judgment. One reason why people sometimes choose assisted living is because people often are being taken advantage of financially. There's so much financial abuse going on among elders. And of course, someone living at home may leave the bathtub on or wander off unsafely. So again, this is a big issue, that poor judgment. Withdrawal from work or social activities. As I mentioned about this call I got yesterday, sometimes people with dementia just begin to kind of retreat back in life. Maybe they always went to the farmer's market or walked the dog or even went to the bingo game at Prestige, and now they're kind of isolating more in their rooms, and then changes in mood and personality. Now, certainly all of these things would potentially impact activity programs, but I put the ones in blue that I think particularly could be problems. Again, memory loss, not remembering what you're asking them to do. They can't plan or solve problems, which can cause issues around activities. They may not be able to do the things they've always done. Maybe they can't paint or do art the way they've done or play piano. Trouble understanding some visual spatial relationships. And again, just even getting someone to come to an activity. So these are all things to keep in mind. And I'll reference a few of these about how we can kind of overcome some of these symptoms of dementia. And we'll start right off with apathy. Now, sometimes this can also be caused by depression, which you want to be aware of and treat certainly. But it does seem like people with cognitive loss kind of lose what I like to call their start button, that kind of get up and go. So again, maybe you have a family member who's always, done the dishes before going to bed, get things accomplished, get through her to-do list. And now it just sort of seems like nothing's happening. And so I have to say that, even if you have someone who loves art, if you just put out the canvas, the pen, the paper, the brushes, the watercolors, not much is going to happen. We really have to push that start button, maybe put the brush in their hand, take their hand, kind of hand over hand, dip the brush in the paint, and even get them started. Because apathy is common and a person may stop doing the things that they once always enjoyed. So another strategy that has worked pretty well for me is, rather than saying, do you want to paint or do you want to take a walk? It's to say something like, I could sure use your help. I really want to do some little watercolors as a gift for the grandchildren. Would you help me do that? Or I want to bake some dog biscuits for local animal shelter. I sure need your help. Please help, or please come with me. And an invitation to do something with you is often better, particularly if you kind of tie it to a purpose. Again, present it as a job or chore. My goodness, I promised that dog shelter we'd give them 100 dog biscuits this weekend because their budget is kind of tight. Let's get that done. And often that can turn that no into a yes. Now, again, this idea of apathy and loss of skills and talents, I picked one example just to discuss with all of you today that I think is very interesting. And it also reminds us, and this is something that Angie and the Prestige staff are very big on, is, if you've met one person with Alzheimer's disease. You kind of just met one person with Alzheimer's disease. Everybody's a bit different. So I've met people with Alzheimer's or one of the other dementias who always played piano. And if you kind of get their hands on the keys and get them started, they'll play a lovely old song. By the way, sometimes they know a very complicated old song by memory. They played it 1,000 times, but they can't remember, or they can't learn, pardon me, they can't learn even a new simple song. So it's very interesting. Now, again, a piano player, if they've always played piano, maybe you could try it, see if you can get them to do it, but maybe they refuse. And it's interesting here because we can talk about this more later, but I think sometimes there are people with dementia who perhaps know they can't do it the way they used to. They're not as good as they used to be. And perhaps they, for that reason, withdraw from playing the piano. But one tip I have for you certainly is look in their past life stories. If there's certain things they've loved doing, certainly try to get them to do it again in a gentle way, because you might discover some great successes. Now, I mentioned another symptom of dementia is this loss of language and communication. And sadly, people with dementia, they often do experience damage to these language centers of the brain. The person may have trouble understanding our invitation to be part of an activity. They may have difficulty following directions. And of course, we may not always understand what they're saying to us. So one line that I always want to thank my friends at home instead that they let me use from their training is to try 3 times to turn a no into a yes, which I think is a great concept. So I know a few of you on the call work in assisted living. Perhaps you're an activity person. Maybe you say to Joanne, hey, Joanne, would you like to come to the art class today? And Joanne says no. Well, of course, we always respect people's ability to say no, but don't stop there. Keep trying. You can often turn those no's into a yes. Oh, Joanne, I know you love to paint and we have all the paints ready to go. You're really our best painter here in the class. We really need you to help out. Oh, I'm a little tired today. Maybe not. Now, Miss Joanne, I know your grandson Todd is having his 5th birthday soon. I have it all set up so we can paint a lovely little birthday card. Let's create a birthday card for your grandson. He'll love it. Oh, okay. So again, this idea of continuing to try to turn that no into a yes can be a good thing to do. So as we talk about activities, I can't stress enough, and we'll mention this a couple times during this webinar, but currently, there are medicines for Alzheimer's disease, including kind of a controversial new one called Aduhelm. But basically, the current crop of medications, candidly, don't do that great a job. The classic medications, Aricept, Exelon, Razdyne, Namenda, they may give that memory a bit of a boost, help someone function a bit longer, but they're not stopping that underlying course of illness. The newest drug, we'll see what happens. There's been a lot of controversy of it, but it probably will just help people in the most early stages. And so for now, we don't have a lot of medical toolkits for this disease. What we have is this idea of how can we improve quality of life? And at a good assisted living company like Prestige, or a good adult day center in your community, or if you have a really talented family network, really, I want to argue that socialization is in so many ways the treatment for dementia. So a few of the highlights that I think are so important to build into your day: art, conversation, creative activity, exercise, learning and growing, music, laughter, being outdoors, animals, word games and trivia, spirituality, using the life story for inspiration and connection. These are just a few kind of highlights, and we'll talk about a few of these in this webinar. I'm going to just mention a couple kind of low-hanging fruit items here. Get them outdoors on a nice, sunny, beautiful day. It's therapeutic. It fights depression. It gives you natural vitamin D. Pet therapy. If you have an animal, I think that can be very, very valuable. Maybe your neighbor has a friendly dog, or they could come and visit. We'll talk in a minute about word games and trivia, but it's quite amazing how people with dementia still often know a lot of words. Spirituality, find out, if you don't know, if you're working in the industry, find out about someone's past religious practices or spiritual practices. Maybe they'd be comforted by a rosary or by even holding a little bronze Buddha. Things like that can be very, very important. Music we'll talk about soon, but in general, try to be bold, be creative. If something doesn't work, you'll find out soon enough, but mix it up. My mother, who lived in memory care, as I said, for 3 years, once said to me, there's not a lot to do around here. I'm kind of bored. I'd like to try something new. So this idea of novelty, most of us feel the same way. And the contemporary view of dementia care is that people with dementia are in many ways just like the rest of us, all the same needs, emotions, feelings. So I'm going to maybe turn this over to Angie to maybe comment a little bit. I love these pictures from Prestige, Angie, but would you be willing to talk a little bit about some of your ideas about purpose? And maybe you can cover the next couple of slides and then I'll jump back in.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, David. One of the things that Prestige that we've really kind of seen, especially over this last year and a half when we've been battling COVID-19 and things like that, but is really bringing purpose to our residents' lives. And we know that each of us really desire to have purpose. Why do we get up each morning? What are we doing throughout the day to really enjoy life? And so purpose is so important to what we do. You'll see pictures here of some of our residents at one of our communities making dog biscuits. And it also happened to be the Red Hatters Club. So we like to celebrate life every day. And one of those ways in our communities is with the Red Hatters Club. They like to do service projects. And so this group of ladies, and we have a couple gentlemen who are involved who tend to wear a little red scarf around their neck too. Find that having purposeful things to do brings such joy and meaning to their day. And so with making the dog biscuits, these were designed to go out to local shelters for animals, as well as to some of our homeless shelters where pets are allowed, and then also food banks who give out dog biscuits to those that visit for the food bank. And the one thing that one of our residents said, she said, "This makes me feel so good to take care of puppies. I miss my puppy, and I'm so glad I get to take care of others this way." And so she just enjoyed so much being able to do this for another community or another part of life that doesn't impact them every day, and they get to have an impact in that way. And so we're really grateful for that. We've also seen our residents get together and put together food bags for the food pantries. They've also actually, before COVID, they would go out on a bus trip to the food pantry and deliver it and have the joy of seeing the folks that ran those food pantries being so thankful and grateful for what they contributed. We have groups of residents who enjoy doing the tie blankets for the homeless shelters. So many different things that we do. One of the other pictures you'll see on the next slide, I believe, about volunteerism. Our residents are also making cards to try to raise funds for the Alzheimer's Association. And so there's so many different types of things that they can do to find that purpose in their life every day, and to find it as something that encourages them to, like David said, that apathy that has developed, being able to do something for someone else or for a family member. We have a lady who joined us not long ago who was a wonderful, fabulous watercolor painter. And all of her paintings were in storage, that her family had put them in storage. But when she moved in with us, we found out about this and were able to get them out of storage and decorate her apartment with those. And then she started painting for us. And then eventually she was leading in painting. We're doing a paint and sip in our communities with some of the other residents. And they got to learn how to do watercolor painting. And it was just a fabulous experience for her to give back and still be that teacher and that leader in art that she had always been. And so that's been something that we see in our programming that brings out the best in what they have. You know, so many times as family members, we may not even know what their past involved. And so it's really honing in on those questions about what is their interaction with people around them, what maybe through different magazines or articles that we talk about throughout the day. We have our daily chronicles, we talk about things, and it triggers those memories of things that they used to do that brought them joy. And that's what we want to work with to make sure that their purpose is available every day. David, I'll send it off in the next.
Thank you, Angie. And I think we all agree that we all have a need to be needed. And I did not know about that card project, Angie, so I want to buy some of those cards. So make sure you hook me up with the right people there.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Give me some money to the Alzheimer's Association. By the way, I'll do a shout out because I worked with the Alzheimer's Association for about 14 years of my career. And I think on several occasions, Prestige has been like in the top 10 or 20 fundraisers in the whole country, raising $50,000, $60,000 or more for the Alzheimer's Association for their walks. So I want to thank you for that, Angie, and ask everybody on the webinar to participate in the walks this year. I think it's going to be a bit of a tough year for the association. We had a really big year last year, and so keep the energy up and bring mom and dad to those walks. So with that plug, I'll go back to the topic, I promise, Angie. So with activities again, I wanted to sort of share with you a little bit about, what I think is a very interesting concept when it comes to dementia care activities. For someone who has perfect cognition, maybe the typical senior going to a senior center, if they go to activity, they want the activity to happen, kind of a beginning, middle, and end. But with dementia, it's the journey, not the destination. Forgive my, I think, errant punctuation there. It's the journey, not the destination. So, for example, let's say your dad has dementia and he always liked to work with tools and wood. Well, maybe you buy him a bird feeder kit, okay? Now, again, if he has dementia, you want to work with him and maybe have this purposeful activity and get the kit done. But along the way, if you stop and take a little walk and look for birds, if you discuss, if you look at a book about bird varieties and look at the different kinds of birds out there, if you talk about his enjoyment of being a birder and going on bird watching trips, you maybe do some drawing of birds. You perhaps play on the internet various bird calls and enjoy this. You make a list of different birds, all the different birds you can come up with, parakeet, a woodpecker, right? And you see all of that is part of the activity. If you don't quite get to the project that day and your father's enjoying the engagement, the give and take, that's fine. Eventually, you'll get the log cabin bird feeder kit done, or whatever the bird feeder kit is. And again, just remember, you don't have to rush to the beginning. It's that journey. I've seen projects like this in assisted living. Maybe they'll go on for a whole month where the staff do a little bit of every day, a little bit every day, have some fun, talk about it, and enjoy this activity. So again, the contemporary view of dementia that I've already referenced briefly is that in many ways, persons living with dementia have all the same needs and interests as the rest of us. The need to feel safe, secure, and valued, the need to enjoy their day, experience time with friends and family, the need to do things and be productive. And I like to say that, one reason why I think it's so important for family members not to wait to use services is because, there's only so much we can often do at home by ourselves with our family member. If you reach out and begin to look for help, maybe you'll find that lively in-home worker who can really make a difference and add that socialization element, a great day center, or of course, hopefully an activity-rich assisted living memory care when it's time to make that placement. Remember that activity fights depression, which is a huge issue with dementia, fights depression and loneliness, fosters happiness, reduces behavior. Boredom is really the enemy. Okay, so let me now just cover a few special topics, because I always try to be very practical and real with these webinars. I know we have people listening who work for Prestige, family members, people in the community, different professionals. So here's just a few of kind of the bag of tricks that I often talk about. And I think one is just to try to make more out of mealtime, more about dining. Almost all of us eat several meals a day. We prepare food for our family members. And this is, I think, a great opportunity to add some more sociable elements, perhaps playing some wonderful music during a meal. Knowing favorite foods and talking about old recipes. If mom has an old-fashioned index card box full of recipes, pull them out and talk about them and discuss recipes. Debating best desserts. Are you more of a pie person or a cake person? What's your favorite kind of pie? What's your favorite kind of ice cream? All of these things I think are very valuable. And being very serious for a moment, food is such an important thing to people. And I will never forget the time that I worked with a gentleman from New Orleans who wasn't doing well in memory care. He wasn't eating all that much. This is when I lived back in Kentucky. And we discovered after a few weeks of kind of misfires that he had been born in New Orleans, that he was a native Cajun. And what do people from Louisiana typically like? Hot and spicy foods. So we got him his Tabasco sauce, and we would say, hey, look at this. We have your Tabasco sauce, and we sprinkle it on his morning omelet or on his meatloaf. He was so happy. He talked about Louisiana, and he ate his complete meal with hot sauce. So do your best to have fun with these activities. building music into dining. And just one little tip that I know Prestige has been very interested in as well. But remember that there are some little best practices you can pick up from even our research efforts. We've actually done studies that if you serve a meal on a colored plate, a plate with a rich saturated color, people with dementia often eat more. Now, remember the visual spatial thing we talked about earlier? Imagine that somebody has dementia, they have some of the visual spatial issues, and you serve them turkey, cauliflower, and mashed potatoes on a white plate. You see, they may not even be able to see this. So a simple trick, particularly if your family member's not eating very much, go to Macy's, get some of the Fiesta ware, or pick up some different colored dishware, and it can really help. And of course, when all else fails, Angie and I have had many laughs over this, but this was an early lesson I learned with dementia. Nothing like a good old-fashioned ice cream cone, because even when they say no to almost everything, they almost always say yes to an ice cream cone. That actually sounds pretty good today, Angie. And when you think about it, you offer mom or dad or your daycare client or a client, a resident at Prestige, an ice cream cone. And what does that represent? Emotionally, an ice cream cone is all about childhood. I think it's hard to be angry or depressed when you're eating an ice cream cone. And of course, they have to hold on to it, to attend to it, to focus, and that licking reflex remains. So again, a little guerrilla tactic from David Troxel and Angie Frantz is get those ice cream cones, put in the shelf, and some ice cream, and serve it. And that could be a good thing for people. Now, one thing that I think has been very innovative in some of the work that I've done that I'm very proud of, and also with Prestige, is this idea that learning should never stop, even if you have dementia. And we've built into our programs at Expression, some of the work I've done as a writer, this idea that, why not teach a class with mom and dad, talk about a topic, do some trivia. And years ago, we had to go to the library and look these things up, but you can probably put together a 15 or 20-minute class on almost anything with 15 or 20 minutes these days on Wikipedia or Google. And so let's say your family member lived in California. Maybe they lived in San Francisco, right? Well, why not have a little daily topic or weekly topic on the Golden Gate Bridge? Talk about the history of the bridges, construction and color. Have some fun thinking about this very iconic city of America, San Francisco. What do we associate with San Francisco? Make a list. Fog, Chinatown, cable cars, sourdough bread, Fisherman's Wharf. Play the lovely song, which I think still brings some tears to my eyes when I listen to it. Tony Bennett, I Left My Heart in San Francisco. I'm sure many of you know by now that Tony Bennett also recently announced his diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and yet he just did 2 concerts with Lady Gaga in New York. How about that for a 90-year-old doing all that, playing with Lady Gaga? Now, here's the cool thing. Let's say you're a family member at home, you like this idea, grab your paper calendar if you still have one, and just brainstorm some ideas for the next 4, 8, 12 weeks about something to talk about every week. Maybe your dad grew up on a wheat farm in Walla Walla, Washington. Talk about that. Maybe he's a native of Seattle or worked at Boeing. Talk about that. Maybe your mother loved cooking and baking pies. Do a program on pie baking. You can then look for some streaming videos, some old TV shows. And the cool thing is you teach this class, I think it really fills the spirit. We all have this love of learning. And even if your family member forgets about it an hour later, doesn't have any memory, we've talked about San Francisco, that is okay, because in the moment, they've enjoyed the experience of learning. And I think this is really terrific. Maybe Angie will comment in a few minutes, but we actually have 52 weekly themes at Prestige. So here we go, where we do certain things. Angie, do you want to talk about our weekly expressions and how they sort of celebrate lifelong learning and some creative ideas and some fun?
Sure, I'd be glad to. You'll see David's example here on the left, talking about apples. And so we know that there's the history of Johnny Appleseed that David mentions here. An apple a day keeps the doctor away would be a weekly saying that we would look at. And so bringing that together with a story about Johnny Appleseed, or maybe creating an apple pie together. I know pies are my favorite, David, and I made an apple pie yesterday. The little bit of fall chill is in the air. And so so being able to make a pie with your loved one, and being able to just have that tactile feel that brings of, doing the dough and rolling out the crust and peeling the apples if that's still appropriate for them. bringing those kind of weekly sayings into what we do every day. I know one of ours is more fun than a barrel of monkeys. So having the barrel of monkeys game out and being able to hook those together. Many of our staff this last year used the monkeys to hold their masks on during with COVID, and still do, and to relieve their ear pressure. And so, but that was a conversation thing for our residents and our staff together, and to laugh about that. Maybe you've seen the movie Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Well, that's one of our weekly sayings. So being able to watch that movie with Tony Curtis and Marilyn Monroe, or maybe going to the store and buying those little candy ring pops and reminiscing about stories of, you know, when your family member got married, what was their wedding ring like? Those kinds of things that we just think outside the box and do some storytelling together and reminiscing together and focusing on those old weekly sayings, or those old quotes that they might have grown up with in life. And you can just Google them and find out information about weekly sayings or about famous quotes, and then form your conversation around them. You know, David was talking about the Golden Gate Bridge. One of my favorite things to do is to get a globe out or a map or some travel brochures from AAA. They're really good about giving you those, and sitting down and doing what's called armchair travel, talking about places that you've traveled to in the past, remembering what the scent was like. You know, if you've landed in Hawaii, what's the first thing that happens? Or how did you get to Hawaii? What transportation did you use? When you got off the flight, having that lei put around your neck and remembering the scent of plumeria and all those scents of the islands. Maybe walking on the beach and talking about how the sand felt between your toes as you walked on the beach. Or we all know, like David talked about, the dining experience. What kind of foods did you experience at a luau? And talk about those different aspects. I know a friend of ours that was in one of our communities talked about the first time she went to New York City and how she met her future husband during Navy Week and what that was like, and the USO dances, and just trying to focus in on those things that brought them joy and that are part of their story. And then it's amazing the information that is brought forth as you're reminiscing through these things that you may not even known about your family member, and you get to celebrate all of that with them. And so we really love all of these things that key back to the past. Those weekly sayings is what we really focus on in our communities to provide conversation and reminiscing.
Thank you, Angie. Great. So again, just some key elements of contemporary dementia care and activities. A few of you have heard me talk about Dr. Sachs in the past, but he wrote a number of great books. This famous this famous neurologist, pardon me, who died several years ago, Dr. Oliver Sacks, wonderful writer about the human brain, about conditions. And as a neurologist, he recognized that music and song lyrics actually live in a different part of the brain than words and language. So I love this quote where he says that music can lift us out of depression or move us to tears. But for many of my neurological patients, music can provide access, even when no medication can, to movement, to speech, to life. For them, music is not a luxury, but a necessity. Again, a wonderful, wonderful thought here. And the way Prestige is using music are things you can do at home as well. Consider getting one of those smart speakers to move around the house. You can say, you know, hey Siri, play My Fair Lady soundtrack with Audrey Hepburn. Again, if your dad or mom or family member really has a favorite, make sure you play it for them often. Use music to create a good mood before personal care. If you fill the bedroom up with music of their favorite, it relaxes people, it lifts their spirits, it calms them, and maybe they're more likely to then get in the shower and enjoy musical programs together. I think, is it what, 6 times a year, Angie, that you all sort of celebrate a classical movie? Maybe you'll have My Fair Lady with the incredible Audrey Hepburn, and you'll do a whole kind of evening at the cinema and do a lot of programming around these kinds of great old musicals.
Exactly, David. I know we've even used a couple current movies like The Greatest Showman to celebrate Big Top Circus. And, you know, a lot of our residents enjoyed going to the circus as they were growing up and know the story of P.T. Barnum. It can even be current musicals like that. We also, I would also like to recommend a documentary to you called Alive Inside. We utilize that in the training of our staff as they understand how the importance of music in the everyday lives of our residents. And this documentary, Alive Inside, is all about how music opens up those areas of the brain and brings back some of those thoughts, and actually helps those who have been nonverbal to maybe even speak or sing along. And it's really fascinating, the study that was done. And so I would invite you to watch that movie. It's available on Amazon, Netflix, YouTube, different parts of it. You can do a search for it, and bring along some tissues too. It really pulls at your heartstrings and really opens up the concept of how important music is in each of our lives.
Terrific. Art, we'll talk about art briefly. We're very lucky on the West Coast to have some outstanding university research centers in the field of dementia between California, Oregon, and Washington. I know there are people in other states. We've got some amazing centers. And one of my other kind of professional heroes, Dr. Bruce Miller, who's at the University of California, San Francisco, he's actually studied artists who get dementia and scanned their brains to see what happens to the brain when they're still doing their art. He studied people who get dementia and have never done art before and start painting for the first time. And he's actually discovered that people with dementia, particularly frontal temporal dementia, might actually have spikes in creativity early in the disease process. There's also the ability to look at all sorts of museums online. There's even programs in New York and many local museums now set up where people with Alzheimer's disease or dementia can have a special morning or afternoon and go look at art, maybe after the pandemic. Lots of good ideas here to explore with art. Again, consider creating a weekly or ongoing collage, fabrics, buttons, ribbons, bows, magazines, colored markers. This is probably one of my top 5, 10 Alzheimer's activities because I love collage. It's very tactile. People can do it at almost any stage of illness. You know, someone very early can help plan a theme, even go to Michael's and buy supplies for you or organize things. Maybe later they can still draw, cut, clip, paste, glue, and even later they may be able to hold something down. And I think the whole idea of collage has a sophistication that's very inviting. Again, create some art together, frame it to enjoy, create holiday cards, note cards, and become your own critics. You know, look at famous paintings like the Mona Lisa and have some open-ended discussions. You know, the Mona Lisa is very famous for her smile. Why is she smiling? And enjoy a group discussion with that. So art, I think, can be very, very powerful. Life stories and social histories. It's so important to know a lot about the person you're caring for. Now, if you're a family member, you probably do, but make sure that if your family member goes to assisted living, goes to a day center, or has an in-home helper, that you make sure that person knows a lot about them. So perhaps you might have, you know, someone moving into memory care, and maybe they'd always loved poetry and they've even published poems, right? Well, if I know that, I might do a class or talk about some famous poets like Emily Dickinson. So here actually is one of the few pictures, I think, of Emily Dickinson, this very, very famous American poet. And one of her really famous lines is, "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without words and never stops at all." Now, I've actually used this in memory care, and it's so much fun. You can talk about, you know, what makes you hopeful? What makes you hopeful? You can list things with feathers. You can talk about the spirit. You can talk about music, singing the tune without words. You can listen to classical music, and you can just talk about her life even. So again, someone who's always enjoyed poetry, you do something like this, it really touches them and I think fulfills that need to stay connected. Exercise, very, very important. We think that of all the things that might help prevent Alzheimer's disease or other dementia, exercise is probably number one. People who exercise twice a day may get Alzheimer's disease later in life than people who don't. And if you have Alzheimer's and you exercise, it may slow it down. So this is very important. We try to do it twice a day at Prestige. Angie, would you talk a bit about Ageless Grace and what that program is?
Sure. We have partnered with Ageless Grace and Denise Medved. It is a type of exercise that is done from a seated position. And it's done in a way that is storytelling, but also to music. It expects that your body will work outside of the norms when it's moving to open up that neuroplasticity in your brain. A good analogy is like driving down a road that you're very familiar with every day. and you know that road and everything that's going on, but then maybe there's a detour sign come up and you don't have GPS and you have to figure out a way to get home in a different way. And it's kind of like that with Ageless Grace, with the exercises that we do. It's thinking outside of the norm. So it's causing your body to move in different ways than what you're used to, but all from a safe seated position. And because it's firing those neurons in your brain, it's opening up your brain to new things and helping you to maybe retain some information a little bit better. But also at the same time, it's not only helping your brain, but it's helping your body as well. And those core exercises that are so important for all of us. And it's wonderful because being done from a seated position, it works with all of our residents, maybe those who are wheelchair bound or whatever. And then we do storytelling around it. Maybe you grew up on a farm, and so we could play some type of music and pretend like we're doing those types of activities, like picking apples from a tree or raking the leaves or feeding the chickens, getting our bodies involved in the story and in the music, and being able to enjoy that and have fun at the same time. We found it's been very successful in our memory care for expressions, as well as in our assisted living for celebrations. And our residents love those times that they get to spend doing Ageless Grace.
Thank you, Angie. And Angie and I were in Carson City, Nevada, last month. Managed to get there during a 6.2 earthquake or some crazy thing like that. But we, before the earthquake, I guess there was an earthquake of our own. I hadn't thought about this now, but Angie, but maybe our residents triggered the earthquake because they were doing this ball exercise of beating on the beach balls and drumming. And oh my gosh, the joy, the fun, it was really great. So I'm sorry, people in Nevada, if we accidentally triggered the earthquake with that activity.
Good point.
Again, again, exercise, dancing. You can Google if you don't. I should have put a picture of it. There's something called a TheraBand, these sort of stretchy fabrics you can get very economically that are very safe to use and kind of can help with upper body strength. A daily stretching, breathing, chair yoga, indoor and outdoor walks. And again, remember, you don't want to say, now, Mom, you need to exercise. Let's start. You want to say, Mom, I need some exercise. Would you join me? Would you work out with me? Would you come for a walk with me? Make it invitational, and you'll have a better chance of going from no to yes. I've already mentioned being outdoors. Go outside whenever possible. Natural vitamin D, being in nature is relaxing, fresh air. There's so many great things and benefits about being outside. So please, 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 on a nice day, get those seats out, get the lemonade, get a hat, and enjoy it. There's even something in Portland, Oregon called a Portland Memory Garden, which is quite enchanting and a nice source of inspiration with raised beds, flowers, herbs you can smell. I love being in California, taking some rosemary or lavender and just crushing it beneath my fingers and letting the residents smell, or having them do that as well. Very sensory, very therapeutic. Angie will say a brief word about a great program that I'm a huge fan of called Link Senior, which is actually kind of a giant iPad, so to speak, designed for elder activities that can be used to really create a nice connection for people with dementia.
Yes, thanks, David. We've been told from at times that people with dementia cannot learn new things, but we have found that that is not always the case. And especially with our partnership with Link Senior, being able to use these touch screens and being able to swipe between different types of activities like we do on our smartphones. And so finding different activities, games, or trivia that the residents can partake in, either one-on-one or as a group in a socially distanced setting in a common area. We found that Link Senior has really awesome videos about things that have to do with our residents' careers in the past. I talked about the lady who did watercolor. There are slideshows about painting, cake decorating, all these different types of things. And they also provide live content for us. So like concerts or going on a tour through a museum or a zoo that our residents can watch when this tablet is connected into the big screen. Many of the old comedies like the Dean Martin Show or the Carol Burnett Show and I Love Lucy can be utilized through this. And then we also, if David can go to the next slide, they provide for us classes that we can do with our residents. David was talking about classes earlier, and one of the classes one of our communities recently participated in was things to do with lavender. And so you'll see on the right one of our raised garden beds where our residents do grow lavender. And then they harvested some of that lavender. And through Link Senior, they had a class on making bundles of lavender to tie and to put in different areas to create a relaxing moment. And so this class not only taught on the artistic way to use lavender with these different bunches that they built together, but it also helped with the spiritual aspect. A lot of people find that working with gardening is a very spiritual thing to them, and that's one of our key areas of signature activities. But it was also educational because they learned a lot about the different types of lavender and how it's grown. And they didn't try anything tasty, but we know there are lots of different types of foods out there. There were people are using lavender in like creme brulee or lemonades and things like that. And so looking at those different sensory areas that our residents have, this was a really wonderful way to engage them in a class, but also something that was very therapeutic for them and something that they really enjoyed and were able to share with each other.
That's really terrific. I actually had not seen these pictures until today, and I love them. The vivid colors, beautiful, very, very nice. So as we begin to wind down our workshop, I wanted to kind of talk a bit about today's reality. Many of you are family members on the call, and you may not be able to visit someone in person right now. Perhaps the person even lives away from you. So here are just a few things I thought of that you could do during a Zoom call, but you can also do them in person, of course. I'm a big fan of what I like to call brain aerobics and making lists. So maybe sitting down with mom or dad and listing cities where you've lived or visited, countries you visited, show and tell fashions, show off your outfit. I used to bring in 5 dress shirts and 5 neckties to memory care and ask my mom to help me match my shirts and ties, things like that. You could do that on Zoom. Again, show off your wardrobe. Menu planning, talk about, mom, I'm creating a dinner party next week. You're such a good cook. Would you help me figure things out? Talking about favorite foods, recipes. And as Angie said, it's amazing. These old sayings or expressions really live in the brain. So you could say it's raining cats and dogs, waste not, want not. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And it's incredible how so often the person with dementia will be able to fill in that other half. And if you want some of these ideas, there's plenty of great lists of old sayings on the internet. And again, reminiscing, mom, how did you meet dad? Why did you decide to marry him? Have some fun. Even if the answer isn't completely accurate, they're always fun to do. Word games, I've already mentioned old sayings, opposites, up and down, salt and pepper, right and left. Pairs, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, having kind of an online spelling bee. All of these things can be really delightful and kind of be ways to fill some of the space. And one thing that I've written in my best friends books is that, everything counts. And I know, particularly for our staff on the call today, we're historically across the entire country facing an enormous staffing shortage. And people will say, David, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. Well, I empathize. I understand. But you see, even a 30-second activity, giving someone a compliment, a little hand massage, talking about the color they're wearing, praising them on their career, stopping and looking at a bird out the window, a hummingbird. All these things fight loneliness and isolation. So remember that, it just takes a minute to really put the person before the task, to be that person-centered employee at Prestige or any other organization. And as a family member, again, just try to have those little touch points with your family member, talk with them throughout the day. All of that can be very, very good, because certainly something we've embraced at Prestige that I've really embraced as well as a professional. Maya Angelou's wonderful quote, she did not write this about Alzheimer's disease, but I think it's just a perfect quote for all of us that I've learned. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So remember, it's an activity just to say, I love you, or dad, you're a terrific dad, or mom, what would I do without you? Or, congratulations, you delivered 1,000 babies, doctor, you're really my hero. Smiles, warmth, all of this thing is very much, I think, understood and communicated in dementia, even after language fails. So winding down our workshop today, Angie and I thought we'd just reflect on a few lessons we've learned during the pandemic, and I think we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. One is that it's not the medical model versus the social model. We certainly need to protect our frail elders, keep them physically healthy, work on our infection control. but we still want to remember that we have to nurture that spirit, touch their spirit, fight loneliness and depression, be there for people, talk with them, keep them as engaged as possible, do creative activity programming. Even if you're in a shutdown or lockdown because of the pandemic, there's so much we can do. Every minute counts. Connect with your head and heart throughout the day. Take advantage of low-hanging fruit, music, time outdoors, internet inspirations. If you're a family member, if you just simply add music to the mix and do a lot more with music. If you're working in assisted living, maybe get some music into that resident's room who doesn't want to take the shower. It can make an enormous difference. As things open up, a lesson learned, don't hesitate to utilize local services and make a game plan to address your care needs. Again, many caregivers tell me they've been struggling during this pandemic. Maybe you're homeschooling your kids, you're working at home, your grandmother with dementia lives with you. That's a really tall order. So now more than ever, make a game plan for the future, investigate local resources, community-based resources. If you think that assisted living might be an option for you down the road, start looking around, make a plan. You don't want to have to make decisions during an emergency. And of course, remember, focus on keeping the person as healthy as possible. Watch for urinary tract infections. Remember, sudden changes could be pain or depression. Dementias tend to be slow and progressive. So keep them as healthy as possible, but always remember that the brain loves company, that part of good physical health is good mental health, and we want to do that for the person with dementia as well. So I want to say a special shout out and thank you to the staff at Prestige who are listening today, as well as any of you on the call. One of my favorite quotes about the work we do, and here we have a lovely picture of the redwoods in Marin County, the famed Muir Woods. As dementia researcher Dr. Tom Kitwood once said, caregivers are physicians of the human spirit. So thank you for everything you do. My dear friend, Dr. Nori Graham, who is a geropsychiatrist in London, England, founder of a great group called Alzheimer's Association International. He said, maybe, David, maybe dementia care isn't really that hard. Maybe it's all about informed love, which I think is just a beautiful quote about the work we all do. If you want to learn more about my work, I'm at bestfriendsapproach.com is my website, or you can go on Facebook on your phone and pull up your Facebook and just type in Best Friends Approach and hit like, and you can actually like the Best Friends Approach. And these are some of the books I've written. Our family guide's called A Dignified Life. Our professional book is there, The Best Friends Approach to Dementia Care. And I think I will now say thank you very much. And I will kind of toss it to you, Angie, for some final words and resources. And then maybe we have 8 or 10 minutes for some Q&A.
Thank you, David. I do want to let you know that if you do have a question for David or myself, you can type that in the chat or the Q&A, and you can also raise your hand. We would be glad to answer any of those questions that you have. We know that many of you are in a home setting, and this last year has been full of struggles and trying to keep your family member or loved one safe, and provide them with different ways to engage them. And we want you to know that we're here to help in that way. I know David's books have been very helpful to our staff and our teams at Prestige through the years as we've looked for ways to best meet the needs of our residents, to do staff training. We always are looking for new ways to train staff and integrate them into the process of providing for our residents. And the Best Friends approach has worked so well for us, David, just especially at this last year when visits were not happening very often, to know that we could be a best friend to those residents and their families and be that conduit between them to make sure they're getting good information and being able to see some of the outstanding things that are happening in our communities. We're so grateful to all of that we've learned through the years as you've been with us and taught us, and really had that intentional, empathetic approach to care. And so we want to be there for all of you. If you have questions, you're always welcome to email me at angie.frantz@prestigecare.com. You're always welcome to visit our website and see our upcoming webinars or our blogs to learn new information. And we're happy to answer now any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Angie. We have our first question from Casey. My mother-in-law has been in Expressions for 1 month. Not a day goes by where she doesn't insist that she's going to get out of there. She doesn't believe there's anything wrong with her, won't participate, and won't decorate her room because she's not staying there. How do we help her understand this is her home now and not a prison?
Do you want me to start, Angie, or do you want to start?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, I just want to say that, empathizing with her, I might feel the same way. So, I think we have to understand that she may be going through kind of a grief process of her past life or work, having her own home. She may have some denial or confusion at where she is. So there's nothing wrong about her behavior. It just, we want to try to hopefully acclimate her and get her more on board. One suggestive thing about what you said is she's just been there a month. And for some people, it does take longer to adjust. So I think, keep the faith. Hopefully she will settle in. One thing I do recommend to families is kind of develop a script, like, why am I here? Why am I here? And one of my favorites is if you say to somebody, because it's really authentic, but the doctor wants you to be here right now. Mom, you need to build your strength. They feel this will be a safe place for you for the moment. You need to build your strength. And sometimes that can be a very kind of affirming sentence to read to somebody. So, stay tuned. Make sure the staff know about her life history. Sometimes I'll discover someone like your mother still enjoys a couple things, that maybe she's coming to bingo, maybe she's coming to the ice cream social or the happy hour. Hopefully we can double down on some of those activities. I will say a couple more things here. Sorry, I'm on the fly here, so they're getting creative. Double check with the staff, because even though your mother-in-law tells you she's not doing anything and not doing anything, maybe she is. So sometimes they say, like one of my residents said the other day, no one feeds me around here. I haven't eaten in 3 days. Well, the family got all stressed out. Of course, she ate hearty meals all day long. I guess my final thought is, again, hopefully with time she'll do better. But Angie and I are both delighted to participate in a care plan on the phone or Zoom with that building, with you, and brainstorm some more ideas. Again, for most people, memory care does work out and does work well, but everyone's a bit different. So those are just a few ideas. Angie, anything on your mind for this good question?
Absolutely. Very good question. And I know that with our expressions, memory cares, we really ask that you complete a life story and contribute to a list of 100 things about me. It really is so helpful to the frontline staff. I know myself coming from that position, and just being able to key in on certain things that have brought them joy in the past, and being able to maybe go down to the end of a hallway where it's a little more quiet and talking about those kinds of things, or partnering them with another resident who's maybe had a similar experience in life. We also, try to put information outside the apartment so that our staff get to know them with simple ways, very quickly, 5 things about me, so they can start building those relationships. And, we do have people that maybe take a little bit longer to acclimate to where they're at. It's a scary thing to be in a different place, and I even know for myself, traveling once again after going through the pandemic and remembering all those things that I had to remember, when you check into a hotel and you can't leave your hotel room without a mask, and all these different things at the airport. It's a little bit of a similar thing for our residents as they move in with us, and trying to remember all these things when they have a brain that doesn't have that capacity to remember so much anymore. And, shadows are different and hallways are different than what they're used to in their home life. So I would give it a little bit more time and allow them to acclimate and get to know the residents around them and enjoy some of the staff and the things that they participate in. We know that things will change. I mean, sometimes people think they're on a vacation, and we do a little bit of gentle deception just to make it part of a resort or a vacation time or a respite time for them. And we have to kind of stick with that story just to help them, ease in, calm down, and know that it's a place for them to be home, and eventually decorate it to their desires and have those special pictures that help them reminisce about times in life, and just get to know each other. That's really what we do. We get to know them and practice that best friends approach and be an ear and a shoulder for them.
Thank you both. And as a reminder to those who are listening, if you'd like to ask a question, you have the option to click the raise your hand button along the bottom of your screen there, or you can type your question into the Q&A box. If you raise your hand, you'll receive an invite from me to unmute your mic so that you can speak your question.
Any other questions from anyone? Well, you've got us here. We're here to help in any way that we can.
There's no further questions coming through.
Well, as I reminded you, you're available to email myself or David. Email us at prestigecare.com, visit our website. purchase David's books. Those are always available on Amazon for you to locate and learn from those wonderful experiences that David has had throughout his career and the ways that he can help us to manage this part of life a lot better. David.
Thank you,
Angie.
Angie. Thank you very much. And simply davidtroxel@gmail.com. Happy to do my best to answer any questions. Thank you, Marissa, as well.
You're very welcome. It looks like Casey's still typing. Here we go. How often can I call the staff without bothering them too much?
Well, as a former caregiver, and I do caregiving still when I'm in communities, that's part of who I am. It's my life. I would say, a couple times a day is great. Maybe you want to get your loved one on the phone and chat with them on the phone, understanding that they may be telling you something that's actually not happening, but you also want to be aware for those things that might be. But the staff are really involved with providing care throughout the day to multiple number of residents. They do a lot of socially distanced group activities in our expressions neighborhoods, but being able to reach out to them. If you're concerned about mom or your dad or whoever your family member or loved one is within the community, it's okay to call and ask those questions. But also be mindful that, they are working on getting breakfast and lunch and dinner together, and they're, doing things throughout the day. If there's incontinence care and toileting and things like that, all these things are going on with different staff members. Our life enrichment directors are involved in doing activities, and our expressions directors. And so just being mindful of that. But really also, if your mind is really, you're feeling like you need to call and check on them, it's okay. That's what we're there for. We're there to provide comfort for you, a little bit of respite for you as well. If your loved one's been living in your home environment, that's a really hard thing to go through. There's a lot of guilt that goes through us when we move one of our loved ones into a community, wondering if we did the right thing. That's very natural to feel. I know I felt that about my own mother-in-law when we moved her into the community that I worked in, even if that was the right decision. But we've been through a lot, and as care staff and caregivers in the home, and we need that little bit of respite to help us settle as well. But know that we do see our residents acclimating to those kinds of situations, and we encourage you to work through the process, but it is okay if you call.
Thank you, Angie. We have another question in the chat. When my mom in memory care says she's not eating or is complaining about something, how do I know if it's something that isn't actually happening or if it's a real concern?
David, you want to go with that one?
Angie, I'll toss that one to you because you've been an administrator as well. I mean, I can give my you probably have more insight on that than I do.
Sure. You'll look for things as far as not eating. Sometimes they'll say, well, we don't like this food, or we don't like this recipe, or whatever, because it's not their own. I may have a judgment on, like, I made an apple pie yesterday on how someone else makes an apple pie, and I may not like it because it's not my own. Give them a little bit of time. We find also with, as you age, the last two tastes that go are that salty and sweet. And so maybe their needs for that salty or sweet item are not being met. And maybe things are just cooked in a different way. One of the clues that I always had with my mother-in-law, who always said she hated the food, and she was a terrible cook, but she would talk about how much she hated the food, but come to find out, she was actually putting on weight. And so we knew she was not so much hating it because she was certainly eating the food. So monitoring with the health services director in the community, your loved one's weight gain or loss, understanding that. Maybe their taste buds have changed as well. With the brain, with dementia, it shrinks to about half the size of a normal brain. So while we have a 3-pound brain, someone with dementia, their brain tends to atrophy down to about 1.5 pounds, and it has holes in it, almost like Swiss cheese. So having remembrance of what you ate and the taste of it is sometimes very difficult. And so we want to try different types of food. And sometimes people with their taste buds changing, we find that maybe they need an extra Ensure shake or a boost or something like that in the setting that they're in. If they're not eating well, maybe they have some swallowing issues or denture issues. Lots of different things can play into that dining experience. We try to make it pleasant, like David showed the plates, so that to make your food look more appetizing. We have some different types of ways to protect garments with dining scarves or whatever, and just trying new ways to present food and it's low salt and low carbohydrate in general. So we try to add some extra spices, but maybe they're a person, like David talked about his friend who liked the Tabasco sauce, so maybe we need to provide some condiments to go along with that and what they're used to in their home. And that's where that life story really plays into what we do.
Thank you. And we have another one here. In the case of downsizing, so how to make family more comfortable in their new home. They continually want to go back to the old house, but it's too big for them to take care of and it's too far out of town.
Well, I'll just comment this way that, even though, your family member is downsized, I think just trying to remind them that, hey, look at this lovely community we're living in. And I think having a script, this is the best place for you now, Dad. And it's, you have so many wonderful friends here and connections, how great you are to live in this beautiful neighborhood. And, you really are a VIP around here, trying to kind of praise them and let them understand they're part of a large community. And then I want to remind you too that, at Prestige, we're really devoted to, fighting stigma and supporting quality of life. So your family member is still a citizen of the community, of the whole community. So, take him or her for walks, assuming they're not, aggressive or really an escape artist. You can walk through the whole community. If there's something happening in the main lobby, go there. You can have lunch in the main dining room if you go with them, assuming, again, they're not, just super disruptive. Take them on some trips around town if they do well with that. So again, try to do your best to reassure them that they're not just in this one little room, but they're part of a broader community. Again, depending on the situation, those are just a few ideas I have. But sometimes living in that big house, even if they don't admit it, is really pretty stressful, because most of these people with dementia know they're not the way they used to be. And maybe your family member was always very neat and organized, and now they see things slipping. Maybe they see the garden going downhill. And I've met many people, including my mother, by the way, who were like, had a beautiful home and always fussed on the home and worked on the home. And they moved into memory care and they transitioned pretty well, because I think they were very much in the moment. This is their home now. And I think they found it stressful to try to keep up appearances and keep things going the way they used to be. I know, Angie, if you have an idea or two to throw into the mix as well.
Yeah, I think that's very true, keeping up appearances. But also, when we talk about our communities and our expressions neighborhoods, we also don't use the word locked. That's kind of a negative connotation. I think it's better if you're a family member to be able to use the word secured, because we're all about safety. And we find that's one of the main things that lead family members to bringing residents to us, is because they are concerned about safety in the home. And maybe they're falling a lot, or maybe they're getting out and wandering outside their home and ending up in someone else's home. I know when I was in Tacoma the other day, there was a lady that was found in a neighbor's house, and her family didn't know where she was, and she thought she was in her own home. And so making sure that they have that security, and not putting a negative spin on it, but it's putting a safe spin on it. Making sure that they still go outside and see that there's nature around them, and that beauty is, as David talked about, and that is a secured area in our expressions neighborhoods. So we do have some really great outdoor areas for them to participate in, that gardening and walking and things like that.
And what about the caregiver? So what is a good motivator for a caregiver who may be struggling with their own issues and refuses to have in-home help?
Okay. Well, a couple thoughts I have is, one is, if you're let's say you're the adult son, don't aggressively push every day. Dad, you've got to have someone at home. You're not doing well. What happens is the more you push them, sometimes the more they push back, and you kind of become the bad guy. So one suggestion I have is sort of pick your battles, do your best to bring it up now and then, try your best to introduce it. And sometimes you'll find success there. I also think with life in dementia care, sometimes it's easier to get forgiveness and permission, and you might just, hire somebody and introduce them and say, hey, Dad, the doctor wants you to have this. We're going to try it for 4 weeks. I've already paid them. Here's how it's going to go. And sometimes you get away with that, and the person might, in fact, actually end up liking the person. My other thought about kind of refusal to get help, besides kind of, bringing it up on a regular basis, but not too much. But support groups can often give that advice. Sometimes hearing it from somebody else besides a family member, if the doctor, if the lawyer, if the clergy member, if the support group says you need to do this, sometimes they're more open to hearing that from their own child, just pride and other issues. And the only other thought I have on this, as I kind of ponder this a bit, is, with dementia care, there will be an inevitable emergency. Someone will fall, there'll be a traffic accident, the bathtub will overflow, there'll be some illness. And if you have lined up your in-home worker or the agency, for example, and you just kind of play that waiting game, hopefully nothing too disastrous will happen. But if there's a change in condition, that often gives you a window to act. My own mother got pneumonia. We thought we might even lose her, but she went to ER, went to the hospital, rallied back. She moved right from the hospital right into memory care. Again, Mom, you need to build your strength. It's a good place. And then she did really well. So you can take advantage if you have your ducks in a row of I hate to say it, but take advantage of a crisis or a problem to get that in-home help in and make some things happen. So those are just a few thoughts I have.
And I would also say too, one of the things that is a benefit with Prestige is that we do offer respite in many of our communities. So maybe you're needing a 2 or 3 week break to try it out and see if it works for you. Maybe you're needing to go on a vacation, or you're having your own medical crisis and you need that area for your mom or dad to live in. And so respite in our communities is a wonderful option. We also find out that once a lot of times residents get acclimated for that 2 or 3 weeks in respite, family members decide that maybe this is best for them. That social interaction on a daily basis is really beneficial. I know from my own mother-in-law, one of the clues for us that there was a problem was she was so physically able, and she would get out and walk 2 miles every day, but it was the day that she got in the car with someone who was a stranger because she couldn't remember how to get home. That was really frightening for us. And she had also left the water on that day in the kitchen sink. Thankfully, it didn't flood, but those times kept coming up more often. And so thankfully, nothing serious happened to her, but our thoughts, would go to the worst. And so to provide for her that safety net, it was really important for her to get into a community. And we did try home care as well. But just, you always have to figure in costs and time and what are the different elements of that care that you're needing. And maybe, someplace like one of our expressions neighborhoods, or even assisted living, if there's not a safety issue, but you just need extra help. Those are all things are available through what we do at Prestige.
And Casey would like to be able to take their mother-in-law out to shop or walk, but they're afraid that she then wouldn't consent to go back through that expressions door. How do they convince her that she could have a chance to go out if she promises to go back?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, I'll give that one a shot. Okay. Well, number one, I'm a big fan of trying something once, seeing what happens. Okay. So if you'd like to take her out for a walk, give it a shot. I mean, I would talk to the staff first, get their buy-in or their thoughts. Maybe they'll even be able to send someone with you for a short walk. But, do your best, see how it goes. And of course, again, script yourself ahead of time. Hey, Mom, I'm on my way to, my men's club meeting, or I'm on my way to, get my hair done. Hey, I need to drop you back at your place for a little while, and I'll see you later tonight. Give it a shot. If it's a big debacle getting her back in, then you won't do it again for the moment. But, try it, see if it works out really well. I guess the only thing I will say is with your mother-in-law's cognitive loss, it probably won't help to make a bargain with her or have her promise. Now, Mother, if you do this, you better promise, because otherwise I won't. She probably won't be able to commit to that bargain or remember that even. So I would probably just, talk to the staff, get their wisdom on it. And if they think it's worth trying, give it a shot. And who knows, it might work out really well. And again, you can certainly gently say, Mom, hey, we're gonna have this on a regular basis, but this is your place you need to be for the moment. She may understand that in the moment. But I'm always up for trying something once.
And I would wait a little while in the process until they do acclimate. Casey, you mentioned that your mom had been in a community for about a month. Give it a little extra time. Maybe
that may be smart.
Yeah. and then try it, you know, make it something simple, you know, maybe just go to McDonald's for an ice cream cone or whatever, as David said. But if you're having difficulty when you get back to the community, you know, have the staff assist you. That's what they're there for, to redirect her, maybe talk to about something they're getting ready to do, and you have somewhere else that you really have to be. All of those kinds of things kind of help fill in that picture of what is best for them, and to try to get them to that place of acclimation and being happy to be where they are and missing their friends. And that seems to be the case as they get used to that. They do build friendships, and you know, and maybe they can also bring one of the other residents out to say, "Oh, you're back. I'm so glad to see you," you know, to make them feel at home again.
Hey, Angie, I know our time is almost up. I want to kind of amplify. I saw we had a question from Graham in the chat box, which I think we did answer briefly, but it was about, like, you know, if mom says no one feeds me, or, you know, I didn't go to the bingo game, or I never go outdoors. And Graham's wondering, how do I know if what you're saying is true or not? Well, a couple of things. In most assisted living buildings, they often document what people do, so ask them. But also, if your mom's saying, hey, I never go outside, and the staff tells you, the staff are more than happy, I think, to take a picture and text it to you. We're happy to let you know that things really are happening, because, again, you know, I laugh when there's one resident said, I haven't been fed in 3 days, and the family got all stressed out. Well, of course, she'd eaten every meal and had seconds. So again, that short-term forgetfulness, it often comes into play.
Absolutely.
We have no further questions in the queue.
Well, everyone, we're so grateful that you joined us today. We do have another webinar coming up in October on the 24th, I believe, 28th, I'm sorry, the October 28th at 2 p.m. with David. We'll be doing a question and answer session and talking through that. And we hope you'll be able to join us for that. You can register for that on our prestigecare.com website. And we're grateful for all of your questions today. And we hope that you'll join us again in October. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks, Angie. Thanks, Marissa. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you both.